I'm 2018 USA National Finalist Rachel Fatherly. You're watching Garage Strength TV. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell.
Throw that ass in a circle, circle. Throw that ass in a circle, circle. Throw that ass in a circle, circle. Throw that ass in a circle.
So we're here for another episode of the Throw Show, and we're fortunate enough to have Erik Johnson and Jason Harrell, who got 4th at the Olympic trials in 2016 in the Discus, and they're representing Arete Throws Nation. Jason and Erik, thanks for being here.
We are happy to be here, Dane.
I want to start off with outside of the YouTube channels, which already pisses me off that you do so much
because
better
he's
than we
better
do.
than us.
Yeah, solely for that reason. I don't care about how good the content is because I know it's good.
Let's face it, it's gold.
Yeah, your gear is always the best. Jason's shirt is so nice. Your shirt and hat matches. And then on top of that, you give my throwers free stuff. And then they come out and they're wearing your shit during their training with me.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, like, come on. So I just wanted to put that out there that I'm already mad.
I've never received a Garage Strength shirt, by the way. Just let me make that.
I'm too cheap to ship it. I want to go into that first question, though, that we had.
Okay. I thought I'd throw you a ringer right off the bat.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot because I think I've got to answer that a couple different ways.
Wait, what's the question?
The question is, reword it.
You teach a left arm block at the finish.
Okay, so why don't I teach a left arm block at the finish? And I think to start, I hate the word block because what I feel like the way that the left side in my mind should be working is that I know and let me go through this. I think of it more almost like a trebuchet on a catapult. Okay, so in my mind, the left side is creating energy and it's helping you transfer that energy forward. And when I hear the term block, I think about something stopping that energy, which I do. It is going to happen to an extent, but I don't want. I look at it as like all energy stops. Whereas if it's a trebuchet, I like to think about the left arm opening, and I prefer that left arm is wider. Similar to Harding, similar to Canner. And I do teach that, and I would actually argue, I mean, Trevor might argue this, that I tend to over-teach it. And I'll say that I like to use it where it's a guide so that when the right gets to the middle and the left's moving around that right side, the left arm holds for a split second, similar to Harding. And I'm talking specifically about the discus right here. Right. And that will hold for a brief moment, and then just prior to the left grounding, the left arm will open wide, and that's where I believe it acts more as the traction arm on a trebuchet. So that's actually, to me, the better term is that I believe it's the traction arm, and I know that that's just not as catchy, and it's not as it's never going to catch on in the throwing world, but I believe that a traction arm is the best description of the left side as opposed to the block. So when people say you don't teach the block, well, I would say I don't use that term. And you know, I've done close to 3,000 technical analysis if you look at the YouTube or on Instagram, and I doubt I've ever used the term block. And I think that also just stems back to Dr. B's influence on me, but mainly I do not like that term. But I think when I watch some of your stuff, Erik, I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't like that terminology. And Trevor and I have talked about this before, and I've met with my brother, who's an engineering mechanic / aerospace engineer / you know, he's got also has a degree in physics, and he doesn't like that term either, and he thinks of it more as like almost a piston or a traction arm on a catapult. So, right. Or a trebuchet. So I think that would be my yeah. In the beginning, I actually didn't use the right verbiage even in the beginning. I say traction arm of a trebuchet. So that traction on a trebuchet, traction arm on a trebuchet is what makes that more precise as a weapon versus a catapult that doesn't have the traction arm. So
Okay.
I don't know if that is too, was I clear at all?
Yeah, I mean, and I think, like, also, I feel like, and the people I've come in contact with, is they'll use the term block and be referring to the exact same thing that I'm talking about, and I'm just not using the term. But there's kind of two schools. So there's kind of that group that use the term block and mean the same thing I do when I talk about the dynamic action of the left arm. But then there's also a group of people that I feel like do actually attempt to completely stop the left side, kind of like that catapult. And that's where I think that's where the term block probably stems from. And that's where I would say is incorrect.
And if I can just, I want to keep going on this, because I feel like I know I know your side fairly well, and I think the problem I have is without that the Alekna left arm, the downfall I think is something like that is I don't like. And dude, I think Alekna is probably one of the best technical models. He'd probably be top 3 technical model that I would use. Harding him. Canner, some things that Canner does I really, really like. But I don't like what Alekna's left arm does in the middle. I don't like it. But I think that, and I'm not going to use the term where, oh, he can get away with it. No, he just grew up, and that was specific to his movement. And
that was the pattern he
and
learned.
That was the pattern he was comfortable with, and that was the pattern he was most consistent with. And I think that a lot of times consistency is more important than technical theory. And so that's, Jason tends to throw with his left more similar to Alekna, and I don't, I'm not going to sit here and, he's thrown 65 meters, right? Like, so boo-hoo, you have a different technical model. It doesn't mean you're a bad human being.
Jason was a 138-foot high school discus thrower.
Dude, that's so great. I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's a star.
Yeah. So Erik, you might with that explain your philosophy on the left side, and I don't like to me. I mean, just hearing that sort of pisses me off even further. That he was a 138-foot discus thrower in high school, and now he's a 65-meter discus thrower. And I don't even want to get into why that makes me bad, but tell me.
Later on.
After our nationals after party, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. We're definitely having a party.
We have to have that again.
We're having a banger all over again. And go into the left arm. Let's not. I don't want to get too much into bangers.
So, left arm. Mine is I look at the finish. Ours is obviously our 6-pillar system. We're trying to hit two positions, pillar 5 and 6. And so pillar 5 is where the arm lengthens, right? To kind of similar to what you're talking about. And then, so as you lengthen out, that's what's going to create the action to whip into it. So I do use the term block, and I do think obviously you have to have a stopping action, right? At a certain point, because that's the transfer of momentum. So that's how we're looking at it. But we go 5 is where everything's lengthening and then shortening right through 6, which is actually trying to consciously deliver the discus. So we're setting up that action. We're setting up the whip, right? Or kind of like you were saying, your trebuchet, right? You want to create this motion, not necessarily here, but that, and create that whip reaction. And that's what so probably similar, just a different way of communicating it. And I consciously want to see there's a point where kids, they do the shoulders doing too much of this versus the shoulder moving and everything moving like this. And I think that's where, especially with young throwers, we have some kids right now where the shoulder path is short from coming out of the middle all the way around. So they don't have a forward motion on the delivery. They're always pulling back from the delivery. So that's where we're coming out long through and forward. And that's how we break it down from like coming out of the middle, pillar 4, 5, 6. And obviously that's going to be for us predicated on what do we set up in 1, 2, 3. So
when you talk about you do like to see the movement of the left side stop, correct? Now, when that happens, is it stopping, like, is it still rotating around an axis, or kind of stopping like linearly or rotationally, I guess would be the question.
That's a good question. I think you create an axis. The left side creates an axis, and that axis is going to have to be obviously, planted or firm so that the right side can now rotate around the left axis. So it's almost like the third axis in the throw, right?
So that's where you'd say that because the left side is forming that axis, it is stopping, but in theory, it's still kind of at least around that axis, it's still sort of rotating. Would you say that?
What we say is the right side rotates around the left side at that point. So the right side is rotating out of the middle. There's a point where the left side then becomes the final axis where everything is now rotating around the left axis through the finish. That's our pillar, 5, 6, really. We make it really I break up the power position into the 2 pillars because I want specific things to lead to that pillar 6 finish, right? So that's,
I think pillar 5 would be still rotating off of the right axis and then going to pillar 6 as you coming around the left. Yeah.
So pillar 5, right? He, like Jason just said, he's coming out of the middle, right? Obviously the no support, we're coming in, we touch down. That's where we start the beginning of our pillar 5. As the left comes down into the ground, right? Block foot touches down and anchors. Then we're going to be, you continue in the right side. Then it becomes linear with the right side. That's that full motion that's rotating it around the left side to create the whipping action of the shoulder and the arm. So it's probably, like I said, similar. I always argue that everybody at high level in coaching and whatever they're all essentially have the same understanding. It's going to just be different communication patterns, right? Different cues to what's going to work. And of course there are some differences in technical models, but anybody who's throwing far has a technical model. I had lunch with Brian Blutrick a few months back, and he even said that it's just like, you got to have a technical model that you're following. If you're not teaching a technical model, you're gonna have this with throwers.
Absolutely. I think with the left side on the finish, for me, I think it's like, if you would say, like, what I want to see is like, this would be this is their foot. So their foot, I believe, needs to be flat. Like if their left foot is flat, and then this would be the left side of the body, and then this is the discus coming around. But this is ultimately being planted into that left side, and that the stopping motion for what I'm talking about would be on the foot, the whole foot being flat, or the left foot being flat, while the right side rotates around, and that left arm is active and being wide.
And I think, let me see your little model. I think when we talk about like the left side being a little bit more dynamic, is also just the actual axis rotating a little bit, even though it's not moving in place, still rotating a little bit. And even if the left arm is sticking out a little bit, the left arm still rotating around that stuck in place axis. And I think that's where we kind of get that, even though, there you go, that's what we need. There we go. So even though that left side axis is in place, there's still that rotational aspect that's continuing to go, even through like the left arm sticking out.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. It's got to come. I teach that. That's what we're trying to get him to do better. His left foot. His system he came coming out of was a lot of coming up through the finish.
Yeah.
So he doesn't complete this, and when he hits 65 and when he's throwing farther, he's coming around the axis better. And so we've been trying to get him to understand how to keep his foot, but his foot tends to move right through the point of release. And so his hips are moving and he needs the lower body anchored. So it's going to come around. It's going to accelerate through the finish.
Right. So yeah. I think where I find this interesting is that, like, it's so difficult. One, like what we're talking about right now is like very, like, this is not novice stuff. This is like pretty.
Yes. So yeah, I would agree. Like, here's another question. How do you keep the discus back throughout the throw?
Right. Okay.
And how often do you run into that with your coaching group?
I mean, that's pretty frequent. And I think what ends up happening is, like, with all this stuff is that, you know, how do you keep the discus back? Well, one, it depends on where we're talking about. You know, is it the middle? Is it right out of the back?
Throughout the I think I see so many throwers lose it. In fact, I have a new video coming out, so and we talk about that because basically I'm gonna this is it. I'm gonna share with you, Dane and Trevor, okay? Because I'm a giver.
I'm a giver.
So here's if
I'm a hater.
It's this is what nobody teaches in the throw. Everybody teaches, right? You put two fingers, guys. See some people who say, oh, that's a preference. I think that's bullshit. You got to keep your fingers together. And then when you angle the thumb, and you're going to notice most guys angle the thumb because that creates drag. And that's obviously going to be, see that massive tricep. You're going to obviously just engage the tricep more when the thumb's here. And that's what you're going to see with most elite guys that don't have funky carries like Sam Mattis.
Right, yeah.
Who turned it over.
Yeah.
And that's that weird carry stuff that you learn. So if kids are learning to do this, so the answer, I think, is to learn how to keep the thumb, this little cock of the hand keeps the discus here. It's also easier to kind of cradle it with your fingers. And then it's easier to lock the discus back. And then so many kids are doing this, so they get into that carry. I call it carrying versus drag. You want to drag the discus. You don't want to carry the discus. And so many young kids are like, it feels like it's going to fall out. And they're holding the discus fingers apart, thumb up. And it's like the discus is going to fall. If you're just doing this, your fingers kind of do this under the discus, and it becomes easier to carry. I don't know. That's what we do. Now, does that work?
I also think, too, what you're saying, too, if you think about it from a muscular perspective, is that when your thumb is like down or flat the way Sam holds it, you're going to be using a little bit more upper trap. And when you raise that thumb up the way you describe it, you're going to actually be using a little bit more of your lower trap, and it's a little bit easier to retract your scap.
Exactly.
So the thing that I would say with Sam is, like, Sam's hand is like Alekna's left arm in the middle, where he has that weird drop with his left arm. And I just think that that's like something that wasn't addressed early on. And it just goes back to what we're talking about is this is stuff where you can see it. And I think the big picture issue is that the high school kids that are tuning in need to recognize is that something like the left arm, it might take 6 months to figure out how to use the left arm, just because we're trying to get them to feel like a mini wrap where they hold the left arm. And then when they feel that hold position, then they actually feel, okay, now I feel it hold, now I can open it up. So it might take, you know, for some kids it might take 6 months. Some kids it might take 2 weeks for them to just feel that delay of the left arm. But then when they feel that delay of the left arm, now all of a sudden they can be a little bit more active with it. And I think that all this stuff is progression based, and if you're a thrower, you've got to understand that the discus being behind. So something that Erik just mentioned with the, you know, with the way the palm is facing, can be a fix, a very quick fix for a high school kid. But then when you get to somebody like Jason's level or Sam's level, where maybe they feel like they're open, or they feel like there's not as much tension through the middle of the circle, it's going to be, okay, well, maybe they're laid off the left leg. Maybe the left leg's not getting to the front as quickly as it typically would, and they're being a little bit lazy out of the back. And now the speed of the left leg is making that more tension or lack of tension. And when they get more speed from the left leg, now the discus is back deeper because the left side's moving faster. So it's like figuring out, well, what level are you? Are you throwing, 138 feet, or are you throwing 65 meters? Because it's different things. And if you can think as a thrower, these progressions take years. And that's the thing with Jason is he's committed. He's gone from 138 feet, and he bought into that from a very early time frame that this takes time to develop, and he got fourth at the Olympic trials because of that. And I think that's one of the hardest things to coach is that I was just dealing with Sam outside being, he was super frustrated and pissed. But I was like, dude, be patient, be patient, be patient, be patient. And then his last 4 throws, it was like murder, 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 murder. And I just think that this is like the ever-going theme with throwing is like you troubleshoot through all these positions, and it's understanding like where are they at as an athlete, where are they at in the progression, and then how can you keep them patient so that they don't jump ship, so that they don't lose their minds, so that they aren't immature little babies.
Well, we just had a couple of scenarios like that, and that's it. It was funny because this is one of the things we were talking about before this. So we've had multiple people this year. I don't know why, but this has been the year more so than any year where I've had more people like on a freak out mode. And so it's really inhibiting to the point where I'm sure you've experienced this as a coach, but you get to a point where you get an athlete and they're so frustrated in a training session that you can't coach them anymore. Like it's over. Mm-hmm. And so like we have one young guy who I thought, he's got all the tools. He's, 6'4.5", 230, lanky, lean, quick, kid can high jump 6'1". So he's an athlete and he probably spent a good 5 weeks where every practice he's just pissed, and so he's like searching as I'm coaching him. He's trying this, trying that. So he's really not even able to process what I'm telling him because he's interpreting everything and he's thinking about 20 different things. And he's pissed off. And then finally, after about, 3 or 4 conversations and a couple of other, related scenarios, I, finally had the talk where it's just like, listen, man, you're going to have a terrible season if you can't relax and start recognizing what's not, when you learn when you're not doing something right and why, that's a huge day. So you could have a shit day. And if you're on that shit day, start understanding why it's a shit day, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now you're off to the races because now you understand what happened, why it's wrong, and now you know how to fix it. And and if you don't look at that training session from that regard and go, oh, okay, I get it. Now then the next session won't be better. The rest of that practice won't be good. And you get into a rut. So this kid literally we had that talk like, hey, you're getting to this point. If you keep this up, everything you really don't want to happen is absolutely going to happen because you're not getting productive training sessions. So the kid did a great job, did a, full 180 on his mindset, started being positive to the point where other kids training with him are like, whoa, like they were so shocked that he wasn't beating himself up. And obviously now the kid's like PR'd 3 weeks in a row, techniques developing, like everything's starting to cut because that's that slow, longer process, kind of like we were talking about in the beginning. And he's been able to get through that frustration point, and that's the thing that I was telling Sam today. It was like, dude, Sam, your movement's not bad. And he's like, I know, but there's no speed. I'm like today in training, he power snatches 125 and 130 in sneakers, and it's like, dude, you're lifting really, really stupid heavy right now. There's not going to be speed, but I want to have speed. But he did stay patient. Then his last 4 throws, it's there, and it's like that's that whole. As a coach, and that was something that I was terrible with that. I was awful with that, with having any semblance of patience. And so as a coach, it's like, I can attest to that. Yeah, with somebody like Rachel, dude. Rachel's just got she has the days where she's like, I want a snack, and she like bitches at me, but most of the time, she sees the end game, and she has that long-term vision because she is more mature, and that's what you just, dude, it's like an awakening period when you just describe what happened to that kid, where he's like, oh shit, and now all of a sudden he can get to that next level, and then he bangs his head at the next level, and it's like, oh man, and it's like you're just slowly building up, and that's what they do. That's life.
That's the thing with throwing is that this isn't just some microcosm of the throwing world. This is actually the microcosm of the world in general. And if you're going to be a quitter and back off of stuff like that, well, then you're never going to be able to adapt to stress later on in your existence, right? Not to get too philosophical.
No. But cause I know me and Erik definitely had those conversations a couple of times throughout the years. Where I have those practices, as you said, Sam has, where it's just like you just get frustrated. You're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're having a whole practice where you're trying to try something different on your own, and you're trying to figure it out, and it's just like it's just not working. So, and then you get to the point where at the end of practice, it's like, I'm just frustrated, and then sometimes as an adult or as an experienced thrower, it's like, well, am I going to try to continue this to the next practice? Or I'm going to forget about it, move on and try to start fresh and figure out what I need to do to improve and talk to coach and figure out from there, how do I get better for next practice?
Yeah. And how do you change your outlook? How do you change your attitude? And how do you change your preparation for the next session?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen to athletes. It's going to happen to young athletes. It's going to happen to professional athletes. It's going to happen. But you've got to learn to realize that you have to move past that moment to improve yourself.
Yeah.
Bottom line is all the guys that I've coached over the years, that of all my best guys, they all know how to get through, a plateau, and the guys who sit there and double down on being pissed off and they want to walk around and, and they're going to stomp and just be pissed and not really, then those are the guys that ultimately don't hit that next level of success. The guys who are chilled out. I mean, he had that actually last time. I think we had,
Actually, I had it last year before I hit 65 meters.
We had 4 distinct times where I'm like, Jay, like, you got to let go of this shit. Like, this is just part of the process. That was 1, 2, 3, 4th time. Okay, listen, dude, like, you got to get your shit together. Like, this isn't working. And then I'm like, you're this close, but you can't pick up on anything I'm saying because you're more focused on being pissed off. I think the conversation was actually every throw was no, right? Every release. And I'm like, would you please fucking stop saying that? So he did. And then it was like, I'm like, you're this close, man. If you would just realize it's not as big of a deal as you think. And then sure enough, within a matter of a couple of weeks from that point, everything started clicking. And he always throws 2 meters further in a meet than he does in training. And so if we see him hit a good throw, it's like, oh yeah, he's ready to go, so. Right. And that's what happened. And I think that's really key. So.
Yeah. And what you just said, okay, so you understand when Jason's hitting something, in training, he can go 2 to 3 meters further, but that's communicating between the coach and the athlete. And that's the most important part of, I believe, with the coach athlete relationship. And that even with the high school kids is that with these high school kids, if they can sit there and learn how to communicate at a young age as a high schooler, and if they can learn how to handle stressful situations like being frustrated, like not throwing as far as they want, whatever it might be, and they can communicate what they're feeling and what they're trying to get out of that training session with the coach, and the coach can then in turn communicate to them what's going on from a big picture perspective, because ultimately that's what the thing is that the athlete can only see right here, but the coach can see everything else out because they're more mature. And that's just, it's like it's every hero story. It's everything goes back to the man with wisdom or the woman with wisdom, whatever it is. And it's like trying to get these kids or throwers to understand, like, hey, there's a big picture behind that wall right now that you can't see past. And if you can hold yourself a little bit more accountable to understand and to buy into the whole training system and to buy into what we're trying to accomplish today, in a week, you're not even going to remember this. You're not even going to remember these. Jason may not have even remembered saying no, and then you bring that up, and you're like, I remember.
But I remember, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's a lot more than no.
and it's uncomfortable, right? And that's the biggest thing with throwing that I think is like getting yourself in these states of being uncomfortable and then recognizing, like, well, I can grow from this,
right?
As long as I keep my cool.
No, it's totally true. Like somebody else asked a question, how do you overcome mental blocks in training or competition? I really think that's it. You just got to recognize it's part of it. It's like I always make the analogy. It's kind of like an NFL quarterback. the guys who can have 3 interceptions in a game and just come back and, you know, still have like, you know, score a couple more touchdowns.
Brady.
Those are the guys. Yeah. Right. Those are the guys that are going to be long-term successful guys. The guy who can't get past that he had a shitty game is done in the NFL pretty shortly thereafter.
I think that's something that I think Trevor does a really good job with. So he does almost all the high school kids. I mean, I don't even have any high school kids anymore, do I? No.
No, I mean, some online. But.
Yeah, I have online kids, but nobody on site. He does all the high school kids, and one thing that he does really well compared to me is that you're having a bad throwing session. Okay, Rachel or Sam or Legend or Lucas, whatever, they're having bad throw sessions, and sometimes I get pissed at them because I'm like, I'm giving them cues and I'm trying to pull them out of that emotional state, and they're not coming out. And I'm sitting there trying to provide them logic. The reason why you're not throwing well right now is because this is happening. You must fix it. And you know, I don't say it that way. Obviously, I have a little bit better delivery, but I'll tell them this, and after 3 or 4 cues, I start to get pissed, like they're not fixing it because they're not using logic, but then I become emotional and then I get mad. Whereas Trevor will just sit there with the high school kids, and it's so much better with the high school kids because you can see they're fuming. Like Keely will just be losing her mind, and you're just like, you're not moving your right foot, like you're not even getting to the middle, and or something like that. And it's just like you continue to hammer it from a logical perspective. And I think that's the biggest thing with breaking mental barriers and competitive barriers is, one, coming up with a mechanism that when you feel that anxiety occurring, how are you going to deal with that? But 2, using logic. Because at the end of the day, we're involved in something that is biomechanical and science-based. So if we can use logic to get yourself out of the situation, then you're gonna eventually get yourself out.
Right.
But if you're not using logic and you're using emotion, you're done. You know, and it's like that goes back to communicating. Mm-hmm. You know, if I'm always gonna be emotional and communicate with emotions, that's good for the most part. But when you're in a stressful situation, you need to use logic.
I also think it's like, especially, and you know, maybe this is more with high schoolers that you can do this kind of stuff than with more elite throwers. I mean, I guess they go the same way, but like one thing I think when you are really stressed out in a training session and things isn't going right, like I think, yes, being logical and, you know, making sure telling them what's wrong every single time is good, but also just pulling them, trying to get them out of the kind of getting them out of the rut somehow, just changing the situation that they're in a little bit. So if they've been taking, you know, throw after throw, just saying like, all right, let's just slow everything down, take slow throws or do drills or just do something different than what they've been doing over and over and over again, while being logical with like, this is what's happening, this is how you're going to fix it. It's not anything bigger than life than you're trying to make it right now. Like it's all scientific and it all makes sense. And having that, you know, trying to just pull them out of the situation, and I think be logical like you were saying.
Give them perspective.
Yeah, and just give a bigger perspective. And like, listen, even if today sucks, today isn't the
you're throwing a discus or a shot. Like, calm yourself down.
We can relate. And again, I think you'll see it. You know, we had a situation recently with a more advanced guy, and he just couldn't get past it and couldn't buy in, and everything and every situation was there was an issue to be found with whatever it was, the way we're throwing, the number of people, whatever the thing, and he just built up enough reasons to say, this isn't going to work. And they're right. So then if they change the scenario, they're changing their mindset without realizing it. What's really changing is the environment change or whatever changes the mindset, so they buy into something else and they feel comfortable, and you know, and sometimes which I think goes into, I mean, sometimes you will have personalities that just aren't gonna mix well either, but in terms of general training, you know, it's I like I said, I thought that was going to be one of the big topics today. We see it so much staying there. I do get to a point, I'll kind of always be that kind of a little bit like how many times do I have to say this? Like, you're making this complicated. Like, turn your damn foot. Like, that's lit. I don't care if the discus goes 60 feet. I just want you to 10 feet. Just turn your damn foot, right? Like, you know, we have a new kid that came in, and every year I have this with our club. We'll always have kids that come in, you know, midway through the season, and I got to freaking figure out how am I going to get this kid to like throw far in 3 weeks. And so we got to
get his reaction because he's picturing the kid in his head going like, "Oh, I know what he's talking about."
Yeah. So we have a kid who's used to throwing. He shuts his lower body down, and he tries to finish the throw. Where literally he can't even do a turn without like doing this with his arm on the discus. So we did a session and he PR'd. Like he went to his next meet and he PR'd. Then he kind of went back and threw a little less. And then it was like, so we literally are just drilling how to, like, this is where we're teaching them this path and how this is going to stop and this is going to come here, because this kid literally is this every time. And that's how he tries to throw. And so now he's starting to figure it out. And it was just kind of funny from the standpoint that it's all about, he had a frustration day. We had one talk. He came to the next practice, figured out 2 great practices. He's dropping way bigger throws. And it's, you know, you just, like you said, the minute you stay in that scenario, you're stuck. And it's so important, especially short term. And that's what I think we always get midway through the season. How are we going to get results fast? You got to understand what we got to do. We got to stay focused. And then, of course, we have a few strategies to solve that as well.
That you only put on your YouTube channel.
By the way, I just want to say that the name, in case I didn't say this the last time, The Throw Show is perhaps the best name I've ever heard.
I thought that's what you were going to do in the intro. You let me down.
I was, but we had technical difficulties.
I thought you were gonna bring up like the original like graphic or something and put it up.
I was gonna do that on a screen share. I should still do that.
Yeah, you definitely. Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so let's see. I had a few more questions. What should we do? Should we take another question?
Yeah.
Let's see. Coming back from an injury, what is the most important thing? Let's see. To focus on for discus throws.
Wait, can I chime in about something? I wanted to talk about Jake Mahan.
Yeah.
Because what Erik said, he said, I don't care about how far the discus goes if it goes 10 feet. And right. Jake, and this is why I think Jake can be really good, is that I had this exact thing on that Saturday morning session, and I was like, all I want him to do is keep his right knee bent on the finish and let his right side rotate. And so I typically won't cue them to turn their right foot. I want them to think about their right foot being stiff, so their ankle's plantar flexed and it's stiff. And I told him, I was like, the bigger joints turn the foot, the knee and the hip. And I was like, just trying to get this point across to him. So he's trying to get it. And I started to yell at him, just turn your freaking foot. Just turn it. And eventually I'm like, I don't give a shit if it goes 20 feet. I want that to stay down and to rotate all the way through the finish, and you can just drop it off. And he does one at like 18 feet, right? And this is a dude who previously had thrown 1980 with a 15-pound shot. Like I think he could have a really big year. And he just drops it off. He's like, oh. And and when we went back to a little bit higher speeds, it wasn't there. But he just sent me some videos, and it was like, he goes, oh, I've been working on that feeling I had that I only got once.
Yeah, right.
But it's there. And that's the whole thing, is that you can go through sessions. And that's where I think with the mental block stuff, this is where I wanted to take this, is like the mental block stuff is like, what's the goal for today's session? Everybody's going to a session and they just want to go. And I was that guy every day. I'm going ham, and if it's not going far, I'm kicking a chair, I'm throwing my shit, and I'm blaming everybody else. But I'm not looking at myself internally, and that's the biggest thing, is that if we can sit there and say, what is today's goal from a technical perspective? Because that's all that matters. So you establish what the goal is. You have that technical model in your mindset, in your mind that we were just discussing, and now all of a sudden you have a technical goal. And then you establish that technical movement in the session, And then when you start to groove, you can go ham. But if you're not grooving, you're just working on that technical goal.
Right.
So then you have to sit there and say, okay, I need to block out where this is landing, or be mature enough to deal with the fact that, hey, I'm working on a technical aspect, and the best percentage of intensity for my technical work to occur is between 65 and 80%. So that's about where I'm going to throw. So I need to grow up. I need to deal with this. I need to not blame my coach. I need to sit there and analyze things and have that perspective. And that just goes back to, you can do things at a slow pace. You can have these, you know, you might have a mental block, but the mental block can be cured by having a daily goal with practice and what you're doing when you step in the ring and what you're going to be working on. And that just, again, goes back to communication. I think, you know, that's where I wanted to take that, because Jake popped into my mind when you were discussing that with that right side. So I thought it was a good point. I forget the question now that you had.
The question was, coming back from an injury, what's the most important thing to do to focus on in the discus? I would definitely say that's going to depend on the injury.
Yeah, for sure.
Depends on what injury.
Yeah, you want to. We threw the camera up to get the behind the scenes recording.
Okay. Yeah, I think with what you're just with that question, as far as what's the best thing to do, is just, one, what's the injury, and then two, you know, improve movement. If you can improve movement, you're going to be rotating, you know, more effectively or more efficiently to your body type. And if you can think about it from that perspective, is like, okay, what was my injury? What was the limitation that caused my injury? And where does the technique come into play that led to the overuse problem that led to that injury? And I think, again, having that logical perspective, like, these injuries don't just happen. They just don't, they don't just show up. And I think that's how you got to approach it. It just comes down to, okay, you know, what caused it? Why was it like this? And how can we improve it?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Should I look up another one?
Yeah, let's take like one or two more, and then we'll do the Red Hot Minute. I almost want Eric to give us the Red Hot Minute.
Yeah. You have to send me the questions?
No, you got to come up with them.
You got to come up with them your own.
Okay.
Look, Eric's so old, he's got to take his glasses off to read the screen.
Can you believe this shit? Okay. Fixing over rotation of the hips, rolling too soon into the middle. That sounds like just over rotation, right?
Yeah. This goes back to what I wanted
feel like
to do.
this is like almost every single, probably 90% of the high schoolers that first come to me over rotate into the middle.
So it's a combo of left leg, and usually I find it's too narrow of a sweep. You like that?
I'd say a lot of the time. I think
it's too narrow.
The knee roll, you know, they're coming out like this. They come in and the knee goes.
Why do you think people teach that real tight knee out of the back?
I don't know. Do people teach that?
Or is it just
I haven't trolled YouTube for generally lately to see if that's out there.
I mean, I also think it's just more natural that, like, it's different bringing your leg so far out from your body. You just don't do that in any other sport. So I think that's kind of one of the reasons. Yes. And like another.
Yes, I say there's nothing normal about throwing. It's completely unnatural. There's nothing normal about throwing the shot put or the discus. And
I think with that over rotation, I think it leads to the left knee. When you start to open out of the back, that left knee should be holding right in line with the sector, maybe slightly past the sector or center of sector, or slightly to the right of the sector, and then a wide right grounding early. So it's like, if that left knee opens up a lot, then you're going to have a more narrow right side sweep, which then leads to that over rotation. So I think it can be, it's typically going to be the left side over rotating, or the right side being way too narrow.
Well, you know what this actually correlates exactly to is what we were talking about in the beginning, and the left side axis at the finish of the throw is that out of the back is the same thing, that the left side maintains that axis as the right side rotates around it. And if the left side axis is falling over into the circle, the right side's going to follow it, falling over into the circle and over rotate. So if that if that axis of the left side can maintain its integrity, then, and the knee won't fly open, the left hip won't fly open, the left shoulder won't fly open, then the right, and it all stays in line, then the right will come down more in the center.
Yeah, that's like Dr. B to a T, what he would tell us. Dr. B would always say, like, the back is the front.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I say all the time. It's a chain reaction.
That's where Trevor and I tried after our last podcast to really push the acceleration method. But you know what? We're getting a strategy together, and we're taking you down.
It's okay. I always
Trevor's like, yeah, when's that meeting gonna happen, Dane? We've been talking about this for like 6 months.
Okay.
Let's do one more.
Go one more. Let's see.
Good one. One more good one. It's like a throws practice. Take one more. Take one more. Take one more.
Could you explain how you coach your throwers on meet day routines and preparation, both mental and physical? I think that's it. Yeah.
This is stuff I don't actually like to give away.
See, I want.
Really?
I
don't like to. I mean, I've talked to Erik about it, but I don't want other people to hear.
I'll throw it out. You got to friggin' mental. You got to be relaxed, not too relaxed. And you know, so I always tell everybody there's no difference, a big comp versus a regular comp or a practice. I mean, technically you're doing the exact same thing. So just go and basically do what you do every day. And, that's it. I mean, don't treat it different, and it's not going to be different. And then I'm going to, let's see, my live, I'm going to have to reset here in a second. Let's see, we'll share it. Okay. And then we'll, hold on. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to, okay, go and re-live again. I think I lost my questions though. But, so as far as physical goes, I don't know. We definitely kind of just picking up over the years, you want to know what you're doing however many minutes out, right? So you try to get your pre-start warm up. I always coach my throwers to be ready in 4 throws.
Yeah.
Like, cause most of the time that's about all you're going to get. So, you know, we start working on that in practice, and then we go and we warm up, and they know they're ready to go in 4 throws. They got the right mindset. They're prepped. And ultimately I think that's the issue, right? When you know the 1 or 2 cues, that's it. Keeping it simple in competition, not having them thinking about too many things. We want to set up the right, obviously we do say we want to set up the right chain reaction. And then from there, that's it. So I think it's having a set. When you just show up, that's tends to not be a good thing.
Right.
I think like that, just showing up and going, you know, just winging it, like obviously that's not good. But also, like, I feel like, and you had touched on how a lot of times they'll just, like, I'll see throwers all the time, like, you know, we have her set warm up in practice, you know, we do the same thing every day at practice, then we'll get into a meet, and all of a sudden they're running 800 meter, you know, warm up lap, they're doing, you know, all this extra stuff that, you know, it's like, where did this come from? It's like, oh, that's what I do on meet days. And it's like, well, you know, now you have a completely different, like, you know, feeling when you're going to throw it, and like that little stuff like actually impacts how you compete when you don't ever do it at any other time when you're throwing.
Yeah.
But you were gonna go.
Yeah, funny. An athlete who's throwing this weekend, he's a gray shirt, right? And so he's the other day in practice, he's like, so on Friday. Okay, so he normally doesn't throw day before. This just kind of works with him. He chills out. And then he goes, like, Thursday or Friday, he's like, are we going to how about if we do some med ball speed work stuff? And I'm like, when the hell have we ever done that? Right? And I'm like, why are you saying this? And he goes, well, because you said we were going to back off on Thursday. And I'm like, right, back off means we're going to adjust your lift on Thursday to back it off a little bit. We're doing all the same stuff, and then he was like, oh, and he kind of started laughing, because I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's right. It, right? Why would we do this? I've been coaching this kid for 2 years. And it's like, we've never done that in 2 years. We've had 2 meets already. We didn't do that. Now all of a sudden you're like, you know, so it's pretty funny.
I think one thing that I really, really love meet preparation to the point where I probably go a little bit overboard. And I think on my end, and this goes all the way back to how we handle training. You know, when we're in training, our throwers will take 2 or 3 stands, and then they're taking full throws. And I think that the reason being is, you know, I was at a point even with Dr. B where we would just go in and throw, like take full throws right away. And that was so that you were in a big meet, you could take 2 throws and you were ready. Yeah. And so what I typically will do is that we'll sit there and say, okay, there's 2 cues that we're focusing on only, and these are the 2 cues. And this will be the night before. We'll sit down and we'll meet. And we'll say, these are the 2 cues we're focusing on. These are the verbal cues, and it's 1 cue of that technical cue and 1 cue that they think about that's going to get them to go ham. Where it's just like, all right, I'm going to hit that. When I use that cue, I always throw far. Maybe the other ones get off the left fast and then, you know, throw the left arm or something like that. Right. And essentially it comes back to, I make them tell me what do they have packed for their food. How far out from warm-ups are they going to start to walk around? What are they going to do when the 30-minute clock starts? What are they going to do when the 15-minute clock starts? What are they going to do when Ryan Krauser drops a 22-meter throw and they're throwing 4 meters less? You know, how are you going to handle that? How are you going to handle someone talking to you? If somebody asks you, you know, U.S. indoors, Mo and Rachel were throwing, and I said, dude, you 2 are in this, okay? And this is the night before. How are you going to handle when someone asks to use your shot? What are you going to do? Tell them that you can't use your shot and you just ignore them, you know. And what are you going to do when people are talking to you? You got to think about constantly what are those visual cues, what are the technical cues, but then even to the point where, okay, you know, we're going to take 2 to 3 throws, and by the 3rd throw, this is the cue. You know, first throw you're going to in the meet you're taking 80%, and if you're hitting those technical movements and you hit a good solid throw on that first throw, then the second movement, I want them to have a quiet head, and that's where it's like, okay, you go from having a technical mindset and having everything imprinted and having all the consistent movements and all the preparation over the last 6 months or whatever it might be, so that then you get to a point where you do try to have a spiritual experience, where you do try and cut your brain off and you just go in and just throw, and you just express everything that you've put, all the work ethic that you've had over the last 6 months is expressed into the next 5 throws after you get that 80% mark in. And I think that's, you know, even to the point with Rachel and Mo at US Indoors, where you couldn't coach them because of how far away they were. And I had staked it out the day before with Lucas, and I said, you know, I gave them each their 2 cues. And then I gave them my hand signals. And I was like, these are the hand signals, okay? So when you look at me, these are the hand signals. And then after we get some good marks in, then we're done. There's no more hand signals. I want you to go in and think like you're going to win this. And I think that's a big thing with elite throwers, is that getting the point across to the post-collegiates, somebody like you, Jason, where, dude, you put too much time in to play games. You put too much time in to take it where, like I'm out having fun. Like, you could have a job right now making money somewhere else, and instead you're choosing to do this, and you need to take advantage of it. And I believe 100% that from the throwing perspective, I approach every meet with the elite throwers, like the way, and I love to use Bill Belichick, the way he's approaching a football game on a Sunday. Do you think those guys on a warm-up day on a Sunday are looking across at you know, let's say the Patriots are playing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship? Are they looking across like, hey, how's it going, man? Hey, we're boys. No, they want to kill them because they're trying to make a paycheck. They're trying to make a living. And that's the intensity that I want to bring with the elite guys, is like, why are we playing games? Why are we chatting? Why are we having fun? Like, you guys could be doing something else. And that's even something I've said with Sam. You could be doing something else, paying your bills a lot easier. But now you put in all this time, and you need to approach that meet as though, you know, they're trying to take something from you. And Sam would be, for you, Jason, you know, like I would sit there, challenge you, like, these are guys, like somebody like Sam, he's trying to take something that you want. And that's where it's got to be in competition, much more like, boom, we're butting heads. And even to the point where in a meet, you know, Erik and I, we'll still probably bullshit, but I when I see some coaches during a meet, dude, I have rage and like just anger, and I want to prove to everybody that I'm the best, and I want my athletes to feel the same way. And that goes back to preparing the night before with every single step of the way, like all the way to, okay, what happens if you do this on your 5th throw? What are you going to think about? I'm going to think about this, you know, and running through all those different scenarios so that you have a mechanism to deal with stress when you're in the heat of the moment. And you have a mechanism to a mantra. And that's my big thing, is you've always got to have a mantra. And if you can have a mantra that when you step into the circle, that's what separates you. That's where you get into the circle, you say the mantra, you get into the circle. Now there's no more thoughts. Now it's just go, you know. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like getting the throwers to be automatic. And that goes back to just good communication and knowing who each other, you know.
What do you do when your thrower says, you know what, don't compare me to them, I don't care about that?
No comparisons.
Jason is the type of guy where I say, you're gonna let Mattis take. I don't want to talk about Sam. Okay, it's about me.
I would say, okay, so this would be my argument. I would say I agree with Jason, because let me this, of course, it's coming from me, so it's gonna be long-winded. I talked to Gwiz about this. So Gwiz goes to Worlds. He gets 3rd at Worlds 2 years in a row, right? And I said, Nick, do you think, you know, because I watch all wrestling videos that all of his opponents, I'm watching too much, like way too many wrestling videos. And I said, Nick, when are you going to start studying Akgul? When are you going to start studying Petrashvili? When are you going to start studying these guys? And he's like, I don't want to study them until I can fix my issues. When I can make a world final, that's when I start to study them more, because then I know I'm meeting Petrashvili in the finals, or you know, whoever it might be. And I see that to a point, and I see what Jason's saying to a point, but I still think there's got to be an internal motivation, clearly, but there's also got to be like just a little bit of a rage, and where it's like, you know what, like these people are my boys, and we'll have a banger afterwards in Des Moines. But when you are in that circle or you're warming up, I wouldn't even talk to these people. Like I think you've got to look at it like a wrestler would, or like a football player would. And I think that's the biggest thing. You know, I'm at USA's when Sam goes 66, and I did drop the F-bomb a couple times, but I'm going nuts, and people are looking at me like we're at a tennis match. And we're at US Indoors, and Rachel could have won that meet if she went off, and Mo could have won that meet if she went off. That meet was up for grabs. There was 6 chicks who could have won that meet. And I was sitting there going nuts, like you're a bad bitch. Let's go. I want to see that. And that's what I want out of them. I want throwers to have the same attitude that a wrestler is going to have when they're warming up. You think guys in UFC fighters are warming up? Like, I've been in a room in Bellator in the back during warm-ups, and you hear mitts hitting, and you're like, oh shit, this is real. Like it's a whole different feeling. And that's a feeling that if we had it in the throwing world, dude, the world record would be 23:50, because guys would be going into that with so much more adrenaline. And it's like, Jason should see Mason Finley. He should see Reggie. He should see Brian Williams. And these are all great guys. But when he sees them in a competition, he should be thinking, I'm going to fuck these motherfuckers up. Sorry, Trevor, we're swearing on our podcast. But that's how I feel, and that's what I think that as throwers, we need to do that more, where it is you get into that meet, and it's like, now it's time to play. There's no more games. Like, there's no more, like, we're boys and all that. I'm trying to take your money is what I want Sam to take your money. Or Noah. Yeah, that's right, Jason. Now what? You can't do anything. Yo, Jason came up to me in Las Vegas, and he like bumps into me, and I'm like, who's this dude bumping into me? He's like 6'8". And I look over like, oh my God, it's Jason. So I'm only talking trash because you're on the other side of a computer. But yeah, that was me. Dude, I love meet preparation because I like to walk them through the emotions of a meet, because if there's a time to be emotional, it's in a meet setting. The time to be logical is all in training, and that's how it's got to be approached.
No, that's a good point. See that? It's good. I'm going to have you do Jason's pre-meet talk.
Oh, I would love that, dude. I would love that. I would love that because
regret it though.
Well, come out more amped up than boom, boom. 52 meters. What the fuck did Dane say to you?
Well, I think like for me, like one of my favorite memories is this year in Des Moines. You know, we sat down with Sam and Josh, and we went through the whole meet the night before, and we discussed everything, and we discussed with Rachel and Mo how we were going to approach, because women's shot and men's discus was the same time. So I also talked about running back and forth, but I wouldn't be there, and we had to figure out like, hey, if I'm not there, you've got to know what the feelings are, right? And the morning of, Rachel's always singing and just being like, she's always singing when she wakes up on a meet day. And Sam had said, I want to go to this, I want to go throw. And so we went, he took 4 throws, and Cyro took 4 throws. And dude, we went through it as though it was a meet. And when I thought Josh was going to go big, because that session he was launching with Sam. And dude, Sam's last 2 throws, he ripped. And by this point, we had no caffeine in him. And that's another thing. It's like timing the caffeine. Timing, are you taking coffee? Are you taking Stampede where you get the tingles? What is the placebo effect that we can get? Because the placebo effect is real. And then what is the actual biological or chemical reaction that we can get from taking caffeine? You know, so it's like factoring in all these different things and timing it out accordingly, because at the end of the day, we want to get as much human optimization as we can possibly get. And every single thing matters, all the way down to sleep. But, you know, that morning with Sam and Josh, it was so, you know, looking back on it now, I wish we would have documented it somehow, because Sam, you could just see it was like, okay, he's ready to go. And I thought he was going to go 68 at the meet. You know, he hit 66 twice, but
he had a great series.
Yeah, so I just love it. I think it's one part that's so consistently overlooked, and I think that just goes back to my infatuation with Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
So, Jason, we do something called the Red Hot Minute, okay?
Oh, by the way, somebody just posted up on my thing. I should just say this. Nick Williams, thanks for watching. He said he just PR'd 9 feet because he was watching our video. So you're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you.
There we go.
All right.
So we ask really ridiculous questions that have next to nothing to do with throwing.
Well, it's usually half and half.
Yeah.
Some might not.
Yeah. So how should we go about this?
I actually have 2 throwing related questions.
Okay.
2 throws related questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we do those? Should we do
this
those
is all
first?
Jason?
Well, I sort of want you guys to ask us these too.
Well, or should I be Jason's like anger management translator?
Yeah.
How about we ask you a couple and then you ask us a couple?
So we just got to think up random questions to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll give you 2. I'll give you guys 2.
Okay.
But
go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna go first. So, mine are we're doing this like
I got
technical analysis playoff right now with March Madness, and we've got there were 2 I think actually could have been like finals today. 2 really good matchups. There is Schultz or Schmidt. Jürgen Schultz or Wolfgang Schmidt.
Schultz?
Yeah.
Jason? Well, Schultz.
And then Harding or Lechna.
Harding.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
I'll go Lechna.
All right.
I'm going Harding.
Harding.
Yeah.
This is why you'll have conflicts with your athletes.
All right.
Okay, so mine would be these are for Erik.
Okay. Go for it, Mike.
Well, no, I got 1 for Jason, 2 for Erik. I'll do Erik first.
Okay.
Victoria's Secret or Lululemon?
Victoria's Secret.
I knew it. That's where he met his wife. I remember. For some reason, I'm so good at remembering dumb stories. Not that your story's dumb, but like I really shouldn't remember that.
You know. Yeah.
Erik, this is only because you're like in the Southwest. I'm only asking this question. It's a music question, and I'm trying to get more music information out of you, so I just want to do that.
Okay, funny. I was going to be one of my questions for you, music question.
Okay, Grateful Dead or Fish?
God, you're gonna go with Grateful Dead, but it's just, that is actually one genre of music I don't do a ton of. But okay. I'd go with Grateful Dead.
Okay, fair, good.
Jesus,
you're terrible.
I know.
Okay, Jason, I ask everybody this question because it's my favorite question. Okay, tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos or cheeseburgers? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I love that question. I don't know why.
Is that for Jason?
Yeah.
Yeah, tacos.
Tacos.
You already said tacos in the last one, Eric. I already knew that answer.
Okay, so for you, Dane, what's your
I'm so excited.
Your top 2 guilty pleasure songs?
Guilty pleasure songs.
Songs you know are basically total cheese, but you freaking love
them. American Boy from Estelle. Okay. And then like something like that. Is that what we're talking about? Like real poppy. Nelly Furtado did a song with Timbaland.
Oh God.
Promiscuous Boy.
Okay. That's definitely cheese.
Yeah, those two are like real, dude. You have no like, so like I'm a diehard music fan, but you have no idea how often I'll be like, man, I hate the fact that I like this song, but I really do like it. But I usually don't tell anybody. But I've got 2 good stories behind those other songs, but I'll just tell them at a later date because we'll be here for 3 hours.
All right, we got to ask better technical model, Darrell or Krauser?
Who's answering that one?
I have to go with Krauser on that. Though I do really like Darrell's technique, and I really like what he's doing with his like right heel into the toe board right now too.
Doing a lot of good stuff. Yeah, I love Darrell's technique right now.
I gotta say, like Krauser 2016. This year he does look better. Last year I thought he got away from some of the stuff he was doing in 2016, but this year he does look better comparative to last year. I think, you know, when we talked with Darrell on the podcast, there was, you know, I kept telling him because he doesn't even think about his left arm, and that was something I said to him, like, dude, you think about that, you could break the world record. I think he could break the world record. I think he's the most wired shot putter in the U.S., and I think he's probably got one of the best approaches. And
I love a lot of he's been. I mean, his last 2 Diamond League meets,
finals for both
he got second last year, but he had an insane series.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's just one of those things where, you know, that's tough and
Here, let me do this for you. I know you guys are good friends, but I put my crush on Darrell. It's on my shelf.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys, but
let's see. I'm trying to think top women's rotational shot putter.
I know that one for me. Well, I'd say I got a little bit of a tie.
Okay, go ahead.
I really were you gonna say Mo? I really like Danielle Thomas Dodd on her finish. I like Anita Martin now. I don't like Anita Martin in 2016. But dude, I'm telling you that I believe Rachel has long-term capability of becoming a technical model, and I think Maggie, you know, there's some throws that Maggie's had where I've just really, really like what she does. But I would say, you know, what's cool is even seeing how the models are changing. But I would say Danielle Thomas Dodd and Anita Martin and Maggie. But my dream is that, like, I tell Sam this all the time, and Alex and all my guys, like, is that they become my model. And that's where I think Rachel could get to that point, especially if she continues to address her mobility limitations that she has. I think she could eventually get to that point.
Yeah.
Long term, like not right now, but maybe in 2 or 3 years, you know?
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
And the changes become so finite as they get to the higher level. So.
Right.
All right. Anything else? Am I supposed to ask more questions?
One more question, then we'll call it.
Okay. Go ahead. Well, we're going to ask it.
Who's asking the question?
I don't know. One of us four.
Whoever comes up with the first.
I wanted Jason to ask a question.
I'm trying to think of one.
I actually, let's just finish it with this, because I think one thing that dude, I was there when you two saw each other after 2016, and that's the shit that people need to. That's why we throw, and I that's that experience. Even though I was on like that sort of depressed, frustrated, miserable point. What like him getting fourth at the trials and sacking up the way he did, Jason, and the happiness. I love that shit.
Yeah, that was good shit for sure.
What were you staying? Were you sitting next to him in the stands?
I think most of the time we were.
Because it was the coach. It was the coaching box. You were. I think you were down a little bit.
And I think at the time, like most of if. Now I think it's pretty evident that most of the private coaches sort of are like the castaways. People don't like to be. I mean, I just don't think people really like me in general, but people don't really like to stand near me. I think the only coaches that stand near me are Erik. At this past year in Des Moines, we were next to each other, and like McKay will talk to me, but nobody else was really talking to me.
Unless McKay is one of your athletes, who knows?
yeah, that's probably what it is.
She had already signed, so I think that's a good one.
No, but I wanted to. I wish at the time, you know, I was so bad with social media back in 2016, and I seeing that like that, dude. That's the stuff that I dream about, and those are the experiences that I think coaches need to unselfishly want to experience. There's no financial him getting fourth and you guys just going nuts. Like I know you won some money, right? But that didn't matter. You got fourth at the Olympic trials. That's what mattered.
Funny.
And I think that's what coaches. Yeah, I'm the most competitive person on the planet, but at the end of the day, it's that emotional experience that I want. I don't give a shit if I'm making 20 grand for the rest of my life. If I can have that 2 times a year, maybe 10, but I'll deal with 2. That's like, and that's, I think that's something I talk all this stuff and all this trash towards you, Erik, but that's the thing I'm most jealous of.
I think for me, that moment, in that year, watch after I threw that second throw and then coming out, like stepping out of the ring and turn around, and all I see is Erik go like this, fist up super high. I'm like, all right, we're there.
Yeah.
I see the emotion on him, and then at that point, it's like the meet's pretty much over. It's like a downpour. Then you sit and then you walk out of the meet's over. You walk out and you just give your coach a big hug. It's like, you did it.
Yeah.
Like it's a big emotional experience.
You know, funny to add to that, you were talking about, right? You do it for the emotion. It's not about, you know, you forget. We went out to dinner. So by the time he goes to drug testing, you know, they do all the stuff. We grab our stuff. We meet some people out for dinner. Tavis was where we went. And Tavis was like, hey, man, great job. And he was like, yeah, Jason won some money too. And at that point, we hadn't even thought. We were like, oh, yeah, that's right. Like, that's true.
Fourth place, get some good money.
Yeah. Like, oh, shit, I won something.
And then Eric's like, yo, dinner's on you, Jason.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, it was great.
All right, well, we'll do this again. This is fun.
Yeah, so we'll have to get some, you know, I don't know am I going to just be permanently on the throw show since I named the show, or is it going to be the original throw show from Arete Throws Nation and the throw show and the original throw show?
Yeah. So, I think what we do need to do is a better job of having you come on, but then we have to definitely set time limits.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're going to put a timer on Dane.
Yeah, right. This is like no more than like 3-minute spiel at a time.
This episode of the Throw Show is
there we go.
by Zevia Energy.
I got mine.
Jason, I think what Jason should do.
That's Jason?
Yeah, Kunani. is that when I'm talking, he should put a timer on in the corner, and then there's like a PR every episode.
No, I didn't know. You don't want to be shooting for time PR.
No, to decrease it.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Decrease, yeah. Trevor's like,
There you go.
Take the countdown clock from the weightlifting room.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, guys.
Peace.
All right. Good talk.
I thought that this camp was invaluable to my technique and how I throw.
My distance has already improved a ton